Hello, here I am, here we are one, we are as one. I've been waiting for this night to come. Kiss, Psycho Circus. Welcome to that Twilighty show about that zone. I'm joined by my daughter, 12-year-old Regan Lawler. How are you, Regan?
I am nervous.
Yeah, you're always nervous, but you have a wonderful comportment about you for a 12-year-old. You're very smart. She's also dealing with something that she picked up at school, which she better not pass to me because I'm going to be really angry if she does.
I promise I'll get you sick.
Yeah, okay. We're talking about the fifth episode of season 4, Mute, directed by Stuart Rosenberg, who would go on to direct classics like Cool Hand Luke with Paul Newman and The Amityville Horror in 1979. It was written by Richard Matheson, who is one of my favorite ever science fiction authors. He wrote so many classics, and he wrote the short story upon which this episode is based, as well as the teleplay for it. Although he changed one element of it, it was not about a 12-year-old girl named Ilsa, but it was about a 12-year-old boy named Otto. Otto, for all of you who know anything about George Carlin's comedy, Otto is one of those names that is spelled the same forwards and backwards, and he always had a fantasy about walking backwards and saying his name, Otto, Otto. Anyway, I'm glad that they changed it to a girl rather than a boy, because I don't know, for some reason I feel more sympathy for the girl than I would the boy, but that's just my opinion. Plus, I think Ann Gillian is just wonderful in this role. This is the young lady who would grow up to become Ann Gillian, star of stage and screen, dancer and singer. She's like a triple, quadruple threat. And she turns in a very beautiful performance in this episode. And I want to say also that this is, like, hands down my favorite episode of Twilight Zone ever produced. And that goes over the 5 years and the movies and the various, remakes and reboots. Apparently Jordan Peele has a reboot that is out now. It's not getting very good reviews. And I can probably pinpoint it to the fact that I think Twilight Zone was strongest in the time that it was produced, which was the early 60s. Regan, can you tell us a little bit about the story?
Starts off in Germany, I think. Is that? There's a bunch of people. They're talking at what looks like a conference or something, and they're talking about like an experiment they were doing with telepathic abilities, and they were going to give kids to their they're going to give telepathic abilities to their kids, and they also. One thing I want to point out that proves what you were thinking wrong is that they were talking about not letting the kids talk and basically like having them never be able to talk. So that would have something to do with gene editing, wouldn't it? Making them mute.
It's a form of eugenics, and what it looks like, it seems really obvious to me that this is some kind of a comment on experiments that the Nazis were conducting during the war, and it seems like these scientists might have been holdovers from Nazi experimentation. So their idea is you stimulate your ability to telepathically communicate by cutting off all verbal communication. So we have this conversation between these scientists. These are all people who I guess decide to have children or whatever. I have no indication that any of these kids are abducted. And since children don't really have that kind of autonomy, they have to go along with these experiments.
Do we have the right to impose this study on our children, even those unborn?
You speak as if we plan to harm our children. Isn't it rather that we hope to bestow upon them a gift beyond price?
Of course, that is our hope, but we offer them no choice in the matter. Is that just?
I, too, am a mother, Maria, devoted to the welfare of my child. Yet I am convinced it is just.
It is more than just. It's inevitable.
What would be the end result of this?
It would probably end in chaos. If this was like a successful experiment with all these a group of telepathic children, that would probably end in chaos, because these kids would have telepathic abilities and they'd be like, influencing each other, and then they could probably take over the world.
Take over the world. Imagine how many were there? Let's see. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 couples, 4 or 5 couples, each of them with a child that they are working on, and then you have 4 or 5 children that are able to communicate telepathically. Even then, the communication doesn't seem all that practical because it seems muddled, as though it's a bad transmission going through. But still, it's a silent and covert form of communication. Probably better than
The ultimate way to tell secrets.
sign language. Once they're done and once they've agreed to this plan, we go back to Rod Serling, who's always somewhere off stage and no one ever notices him. You know, they don't get up, hey, what is that man doing over there talking about us? He says the play itself will be performed almost entirely off stage. And that what we are going to see in this episode, which is very interesting to me, are the final scenes that are enacted a decade later and with a different cast. We go 10 years into the future. Previously, these people were talking about where they were going to take their kids, because this is the air date of this episode is January 31st, 1963, which would be 10 years before would be 1953. So this is a Germany in chaos and almost completely destroyed after the war. So you have these people. It's kind of a Boys from Brazil kind of a thing, which Regan doesn't know about, which was basically, I guess it was a novel based on Ira Levin about continuing with a Fourth Reich in some way. Although these people seem very friendly. Some are going to, the Nielsen's, for example, are going to a small town in Pennsylvania called German Corners, which I guess maybe they looked on a map and they had maybe some relations living there at the time. But it sounded like a friendly place for Germans to go because it's called German Corners. Well, Pennsylvania was settled by many, many Germans, actually.
Now that we're in this scene, we start off with this couple, and the man in the couple gets a phone call saying that one of their neighbors, their house caught on fire.
Right, the couple that's a sheriff and his wife.
So they go over to that fire, and there's a little girl, and she's kind of passed out or something. And
Yeah, she survived the fire. She is outside of the house, kind of a distance away from the fire.
So they take her in. They're wondering why she's so quiet.
Well, they assume that she's in shock.
Yes. She's living with them, and
Don't forget the mysterious backstory of the older couple there, the sheriff and his wife. They had a daughter, and that daughter died. I guess she drowned. Kids used to drown all the time back in the early 60s. I don't know why. While the husband, played by Frank Overton, who I remember from an episode of Star Trek, I believe it was This Side of Paradise, in addition to a bunch of other things, he's kind of more stoic and more rigid, and he tries to just get on with his life. It's obvious that his wife, Cora, is still traumatized by the death of their daughter, and it was my theory that she believes that this was some kind of divine providence or a blessing in disguise that this child should be delivered to her. She maybe sees it in the form of what in mythology might be referred to as a changeling, where a child is replaced with another child, a fairy child. Although you tell me something horrible about that.
yeah, I've heard that the changeling will just like disguise itself as another baby and then eat like the baby.
With some carrots and some duck surprise and a little bit of orange sauce on top. Yeah, they eat children. But the more I guess the more beneficent of that story would be that the changeling is there to replace another child. That's really kind of and it isn't the changelings of Star Trek that are shapeshifters or whatever. They just call them that because they change. But here, obviously, this woman is very distraught and looks upon Elsa as a gift sent down from heaven by baby Jesus.
I don't quite remember if anything happens in between, but this family is trying to like get her to talk, and they're wondering what's up with her. Like she can't talk.
We do hear
What's up
some
with
of her
that?
thoughts.
Oh yes, she's like calling her parents with I'm assuming is her telepathic abilities. She's trying to call them, and then she finds out that they're dead, and she's her thoughts are very loud on my TV.
Well, yeah, that's so you can hear them. They're coming from her head.
She's very upset that her parents are dead.
She kind of wants other people to take charge of her. She doesn't know if she likes this family particularly all that much, and it's a little weird and presumptuous on the part of Cora there to just kind of adopt her. She does not want anyone to take this kid away from her. The sheriff even writes letters to relations, I guess, in Germany or something like that, And he's like, if you know anything about this girl, please come and pick her up or something, whatever custody might be, happening there. And he puts the letters, kind of stupidly, I think. If he's not able to read his wife, because I'm able to read my wife, I know what she's thinking at any given time. I know, just can look in her face and see what's going on. You can look at people, but he doesn't seem to really have any indication of what she's thinking. He just puts the letters on in the mailbox outside his house. And right after he leaves, she just goes and grabs the letters and sets them on fire, burns them. She doesn't want anyone to know.
The little girl's watching with her abilities. She's
yes,
watching this.
She has not only, I guess, the ability to communicate telepathically. She can see what people are doing or read their minds with what they're doing, and they can be far away.
And then she runs out. Like, she sees that and she just runs off.
Yeah, right. She's triggered, you might say, and she flips out, goes into the town square. She's completely confused by everything, and there's all these people around. It really kind of leads you to, because they go on at length about how cruel you can be to your child by not giving her the power to speak.
If I may, she's probably used to not being around a lot of people because can I say something that happens later, like just in a little snip? Because like she's not used. She's having trouble being around a lot of people. She can't really handle that, so she kind of just starts like crying somewhere. And a reason that she is like that because she can read minds, but sometimes it's like, I guess it's kind of against her will that she can read minds. Later in the story, which I will explain later, she's hearing the thoughts of all these people and she's not controlling it. She's just hearing the thoughts by accident.
Right. She almost looks like she's having a headache listening to it. And then we enter in with the teacher, Miss Frank, played, I have to say, brilliantly by Irene Daly. I mean, this woman is an amazing actress because, and I thought about this, and let me start first because I know you have thoughts about this, but I really hated this character. The first time I saw this episode, hated her even more the second time. Hated her. I've seen the episode many, many times, and then I begin to understand what's going on here. Frank Overton's character, Harry, reasons that Ilsa should be put in school. She's been homeschooled, you might say, by these Germans, never permitted to go out and meet other people and have new experiences, just sort of isolated in this house. Everybody seemed to have a dislike for the Nielsen's in German Corners because they were not very congenial people. They kept to themselves. Part of that paranoia, I think, from the war, from being scientists during the war, they kind of take it upon themselves to have this hostility for them, and that hostility deepens more when they see what they've done to this child, which they assume either rightly or wrongly is a form of abuse.
I can see how other people would think that's abuse, but in reality, they think they're helping her, because obviously of this experiment, they think that they're helping her. Because if you're telepathic, you're not going to want to use your voice. You're not going to want to actually speak. They think they're helping her.
Well, I think you're only not going to want to use it because you just feel like it's not natural. So she would probably be raised to believe it's unnatural to speak, even though they speak. So
it's kind of like in Next Generation, the show, Star Trek, Troy's mother, it kind of frowns upon oral communication, and she's always using her telepathic abilities with Troy.
Which irritates the hell out of Troy, because Troy has to deal with humans and other people who do not communicate telepathically.
She's used to
It's very elite.
communicating orally.
It's a very elitist attitude to have. We have an ability, and we're better than you. So we're going to use our ability and be better than you, even though the majority of people out there do not communicate in this way. Okay, so we move on to the school. Your thoughts on the teacher?
She is a teacher. She could have done this as a human being instead of a creature. That she acts like a creature. I know you think that she's doing something right here, or you understand what she's doing, but in reality, I do not. She is. I know I've only seen this episode once, and you've seen it like 500 times, but like, I know what she's trying to do. I know she thinks she's doing the right thing, but really, she could be doing this in a much better way.
You don't like the way she carries herself.
Yes. Like, I understand her point of view. I understand that how she thinks. It's just that she's not really doing what she wants to do in the best way that she possibly could do it.
Well, you're not looking at it from the point of view of how teachers behaved back then. me and Mommy had teachers, like when we were kids at that age, teachers were very rigid. They were very hard on you. They were very rough with you. They were very tough. The way I see it after so many times watching this episode, I see this teacher exactly for what I believe her to be, which is she is going to break and reset this young lady. In order to do that, she has to be firm and she has to be tough. But also, she has a secret about her.
That she also is telepathic.
Yes.
And that's how she's trying to get this girl to talk, by trying to, I guess, the way I see it is that she's trying to make her head explode. That's really what that is. Because it's like these kids are all talking, and then she's talking all at once, and it's kind of just like they're trying to break her from the inside and the outside at the same time.
This is one of the most emotional scenes I've ever seen from an actress. The scene where she tells her, she says, "I know what you are, because I'm one too."
I know exactly what you are. I know, because my father tried to force me into the same thing when I was your age. And after many years of concentrated effort, I overcame that sickness, which my father had forced on me, as I am going to help you overcome it, Ilsa. It's true, isn't it? They've been training you to be a medium, trying to distort your innocent mind to communicate with the dead. You've been trained to be a medium, haven't you? Haven't you?
No, it isn't true. That's not what they were training me for.
You understand me. You know what I think. Don't you see, Elsa? You've proven my point. You've proven it to me.
She has an interesting theory that for some reason Ilsa is to communicate with the dead, which kind of goes back to a lot of the crazy stories we heard about Hitler. Hitler was obsessed with the idea of communicating with the dead. He felt that there was some kind of a secret that the dead had that they could reveal to the living or something. But I think it's sort of a conglomeration of different paranoid ideas that perhaps we had about the Nazis and what their ultimate plan was. And also Hitler was a nut. And the whole Third Reich was. The idea is for at least for Miss Frank, the teacher, was that she was supposed to be communicating with the dead. Perhaps they had a whole career in mind for her. Hey, you'll be a psychic fortune teller reader or something. When she says this, she starts crying. Tears start forming in her eyes, and I'm like, this is an actress here. I mean, my God, you can't get an actress to cry on kids. It wasn't glycerin tablets or anything. It wasn't anything that makes the eyes. She didn't throw a little salt in her eye to make herself look like she was crying. She was crying, and it was for real. And it's an incredible performance because you feel for her. You feel sympathy for her as just as much as you would feel for Ilsa. And she is determined not to let this girl go through life without the ability to communicate. The ability to communicate is a very strong gift. It's right there with the ability to read. It's an incredible power that you have with your words and with your thoughts. So yeah, she is a little rough on her in that way, and it makes her uncomfortable. There's a particularly jarring scene that I hate. My least favorite of it's a scene in the episode, but it's a good scene. It's where she tells the class to think Ilsa's name.
Yes. That's what I was talking about. They're all thinking it, and she's reading their minds against her will.
Yeah, it is a kind of form of assault, a telepathic assault.
But it's not like the teacher.
Also, the kids, what are they thinking at this? Wait a minute. Our teacher wants us to think this girl's name? Okay, I'll just think this girl's name. You know.
It's impossible to think one thought at a time, and I know this for a fact. I think like 500 thoughts at a time. It's really impossible to just think one person's name. Like, I'll be thinking one person's name, and then I'll be thinking about that person, and then I'll be thinking, why am I thinking this person's name? And then if that telepathic person is reading their minds, they're going to be thinking, they're going to be reading that they're wondering why they're doing this.
Is that why you're so confused all the time? Just as a side tangent there.
Are you capable of thinking one thought at a time?
If I'm really tired, I get up in the morning, I'm thinking, throat dry, need glass of water. Throat dry, need glass of water. You know, I'm thinking that. But then as I wake up and I have a little bit of coffee, and then I'm thinking, a million different torrents of thoughts going on in there. But we're smart, because we're Lawlers.
I tend to think about the thoughts that I'm thinking, and then I think about those thoughts, and then I think about those thoughts, and then I have a song stuck in my head. That's basically how my thoughts work.
Okay, so in the midst of all of this, you've got Oscar Barraghy, the great actor who's in everything, and apparently he was in a Monkeys episode too, and his wife show up at the town, I guess because they didn't receive any communication, so they showed up at German Corners.
I wanted to say something about in the school. The teacher says something that I find rather creepy. Like, I forgot exactly what it was, but he said something about Elsa, like, eventually something like just like the rest of us or something like that. That I found really disturbing because it's kind of like she's trying to assimilate them into the rest of the class and just make her just like them.
I had a thought about that. It wasn't. I didn't see it as malicious as you did. I didn't see it as an attack on singularity or being unique or having your own qualities or characteristics that make you you. I think what she was trying to do was it's going to be very difficult for this girl if she can't adapt to the circumstances around her. It isn't necessarily that she's being consumed by the world around her. It's just that she has to learn how to play the game in this world where you have to speak.
I saw it as like they're trying to make her part of the crowd, just being in the crowd and just not being different. Making her like think like them, talk like them.
But in reality you do have to adapt. Because if
But
you
no,
don't,
this isn't adaptation. That's not what I was seeing as that. I was seeing it as the Borg.
the Borg. But the thing is, if she cannot function, she will be singled out for the rest of her life. She'll be put under a microscope. She'll be put under a spotlight. Even with the way the German couple talks about her parents, they gave her as much love or attention or devotion as they could, which means they didn't really give her that much attention, devotion, or love. Instead, they tried their best because they're not parents, they're scientists. She was their little lab rat. They were experimenting on her. That's how I saw it. And what this girl needed, above all else, was love. That's what she needed. Love is the most important part of this episode, the most important part of this story. And love is part of what helps you to adapt to the world around you. People need to love, damn it, people out there listening. You need to love, not hate. Hate is a disease.
That teacher, she was acting like, okay, this isn't about like teaching her how to live. This was about teaching her how to think and how to live and how to exist and how to think, how to talk, how to act, how to do everything, just like the rest of these people here.
That's what teachers used to do. They're not allowed to do that so much anymore.
The teachers used to be Borg and assimilate?
No. The teachers were always traditionally meant to be your parents away from your parents. While your parents were at work or whatever, and you had to go to school, you had to be there, and the teacher is supposed to be like a surrogate parent in that way. They're supposed to prepare you for life
But
with,
what you described
with
was
literature,
not.
mathematics, art, science. They're supposed to be doing that.
What you described was not like a parent. What you described was a creature.
Well, it's the episode is almost written and photographed from a child's point of view. So she's going. Look at the way Elsa looks at everyone. They're all a bunch of circling hawks. She's seeing her parents, a teacher, authority figures, whatever these people are that are not her mother and father. So that's how we're looking at it. We're looking at it from her perspective, and that's my question for you. What did you think of Elsa? Does she successfully communicate to you the characteristics of a 12-year-old girl? Because you are a 12-year-old girl.
That's going to be a hard one because I'm used to people writing kids my age and also kids older even that like idiots. Like, it's really kind of discriminatory that people think that kids my age are all stupid, even though a lot of us aren't. I know a lot of smart kids and I know a lot of dumb kids. Your age doesn't matter.
But it seemed like they put her in a class of younger kids. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
None of these kids were her size.
Well, that's probably because
because she never had an education outside of her house, so they're starting her off slow with and all these kids, they're not very good readers, you know.
yeah, that kid was reading the way freaking kids in my class read, and I'm in 6th grade.
Okay.
Which is really sad.
Well, that might be a reflection on the kid, not necessarily on the education.
This one kid I know who's so smart, he's like a genius. He's always talking about how smart he is. He reads like this, and he has no personality in what he is reading.
Without naming names, thankfully. We come to the end where the two German...
She has something to say about it.
we come to the end where the two German people, Oscar Bergi and Eva Serene, I guess is what her stage name is, as Frau Maria Werner and her husband, Professor Karl Werner, have come to German Corners to, I guess, take Ilsa back. We get to a stunning ending here. Ilsa, you're being so under so much pressure, pressing down on her. She finally, I mean, like, when it comes down to these people that are going to take her away, and she has really begun to kind of begin a new life with the Wheelers here, and with her adopted mother, Cora. She just starts shouting over and over again. She finally speaks. She says, "My name is Ilsa," and she says it over and over again. And Cora just takes her in her arms, and she says, "You can't have her. I love her. She's my daughter." And this is an ending that always gets to me. It's an ending that really, it makes me cry watching it. It's just
You weren't crying when we watched it.
I was actually holding back tears when we were watching it. I tend to get emotional about things like that. It's the pathos of drama, if you will, or whatever. But it's so beautifully executed here.
My name is Ilsa. My name is Ilsa. My name is Ilsa.
Don't cry, baby. Don't cry. I'm here. I'm here.
It's Ilsa.
Don't cry, darling. I'm with you. I'm
My
with
name
you.
is Ilsa.
You can't take her away from me.
Cora!
No! I won't let them. I love her. And she loves me. She needs me. You have no right. You have no right. You have no right.
This German couple's like, geez, I guess we'll just go then. We'll be leaving. Can you direct us to the bus station, please? And the sheriff just takes them to the bus stop and says the bus will be along in 5 or 10 minutes. And thank you
Bye-bye.
for
Please never come back.
traumatizing our adopted daughter. And they're like, they're perfectly fine with that. I mean, they're kind of old anyway. I mean, they're older than these other people. And
We're too old for this.
so they're like, the war's over. The Americans have won. We can't do psychic children anymore. Sorry.
They were psychically communicating.
Yeah. They were, and they were trying to put pressure on her, and they were like, "Elsa, come with us, come with us, come with us, come with us," and that's why Elsa kind of freaked out. And, okay, end of the show. Like I said, my favorite episode of Twilight Zone. Regan, what did you think of this episode?
It was good, but there wasn't enough of it. The problem was its running time isn't long enough. Like there has.
No, this is an hour-long episode. It was.
But
the fourth
there
season.
should have been like, at the end there should have been something at the end about her class. Like they should have gone back to the teacher, because now she figured out. But like.
Well, it's a morality play. I mean, you have the teacher is there to be overcome. That's the thing. No, we don't get enough. There is a lot in this. This could be a movie. This could be a full feature-length movie, 2-hour movie, and it would be fantastic. You would have a lot of more details. But Serling does say at the beginning that we're only seeing the last part of the story.
My problem with it is that you don't learn to speak that quickly. That's ridiculous.
Okay, that's a fair criticism, but
Because you have to learn how to move your lips in the correct way.
Well,
Babies start off going blah 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 blah, and stupid stuff like that. But eventually we learn how to talk. Like I'm talking right now. I'm not saying blah blah blah. Like I learned how to move my lips and my tongue and my teeth in the correct way to actually talk. She instantly learns how to talk. I'm jealous.
Okay. All right. We'll wrap it up now. I want to thank my guest, Ms. Regan Lawler. It took a little bit, and we finally greased the wheels, and now we're done. So this has been that Twilighty show about that zone. Our next episode will be about the episode Death Ship, directed by Don Medford and also written by Richard Matheson. And I believe Nicole Phelps will be joining me for that episode. Until then, we'll see you out there in that Twilighty zone. Good night. Say good night.
Good night. Even though it's really early in the day, actually.
Yes, it is.
And now, here's another sound bite for you. Why'd you get out of here? We don't need you anymore. Oh, yeah? Well, take this, you little ungrateful beep. What did you do to my boy?
You're awake, by the way. You're not having a terrible, terrible dream. Also, you're not dead and you haven't gone to hell. This is your life now. This is us. This is our country.